Hi, Jill. Thank you. I appreciate being here and the invite. Jill and I go back quite a ways, and I was very honored to be part of the greeneducation.us strategy here as far as educating members on these different zero waste and sustainability topics. So thank you for the invite, and I'm so happy to do this. So let's get started here. So we're going to be talking today about food waste reduction in the hospitality industry. And if you do have questions, go ahead and put them in the chat. Hopefully they are relevant to either the slide I'm on or the topic that we're on, but I would like to answer those for you guys in real time. If you feel more comfortable holding your questions to the end for the Q&A, we will allow some time at the end for that. So it's your choice. If you have a burning question and it's very relevant to what we're talking about, drop it in the chat and Jill will do her best to read them off as we go. Alrighty, so I'm sure many of you have seen the linear production model where we take it, we make it, and we dump it. And this is where we're extracting raw resources from the earth. We're producing them into a product. We distribute those across the country or overseas. And then your buyers consume that. And eventually, whenever it breaks or it becomes obsolete, or the new bright shiny thing is out on the market, then there is a disposal process. And that is end to end. It's A to Z. And there's really not much thought about what happens after I put something into the waste bin. So what we want to do is to take the ends, A to Z, and connect them into a loop. We want to close that loop, of course. Zero waste is defined globally as 90% or more waste reduction or diversion from landfills and incinerators. There's a much longer definition on the ZWIA.org website. That's the Zero Waste International Alliance. And to look at the zero waste system here on the left, you can start, for me, it usually starts with empowered consumers at the bottom right. A lot of times legislation does not pass until there is a massive outcry from educated and empowered consumers to change these laws. So when we're talking laws, we're talking recycling policy at the municipal level, or maybe this is employees, right? Empowered employees that are pushing an initiative up to the top tier level of an executive team. So for me, this graphic is a little bit backwards, and I'll give you some idea as to why a little bit later when I talk about e-waste legislation that I helped pass here in Texas. So for me, the empowered consumer is usually the one that's pushing these changes up to the top. It's either they're purchasing with their dollar, or they're creating a stink, right? On social media, they're calling these companies out. They are writing to their customer service. They're taking out, editorials in the newspaper if you want to go the traditional route. But educated and empowered consumers usually are the tip-off of policy change. So empowered consumers know that they can what they can and can't recycle. So putting their materials into the correct bins, where that goes to the Resource Recovery Center. This legislation is usually impacted by producers who are making these products. And think about extended producer responsibility or take back bills. Once those bills are in place, once those companies are actually taking back their own products and making it easier for the empowered consumer to recycle and get rid of their products for the benefit of society and not just ending up in a landfill or burned off in an incinerator, then you're going to look at creating jobs for the environment. So these are well-paying green jobs with dignity. And that's usually what pushes the legislation up at the top, with changing rules and shifting subsidies as well. Many times the extended producer responsibility bills will shift subsidies, and they will put the onus financially on the producer rather than the taxpayer. And then once they have that in play, they start designing new products for environmental responsibility. So now that they're having to take back their own products through the producer responsibility laws, they're going to start designing their products, their newer products that come out on the market, for recyclability, and to phase out toxins like lead and mercury in their products. And that ends up providing clean production. So let me move on to the next slide here. And another reason why zero waste is so important is what we call the waste bird. And for every pound of waste at the curb, there's about 71 pounds of waste that's produced upstream to make that 1 pound. And many people don't know, but landfills are one of the largest sources of greenhouse gas emissions in the world. I think it's one of the top 5, actually. Unfortunately, they've put off because of like rotting organics, like food waste, rotting yard waste, like yard clippings and shrubbery, through, maybe like landscaping crews that come and dump it. This rotting organic material produces a lot of methane and carbon dioxide. Methane is actually 21 to 72 times more potent than carbon dioxide. And a 90% reduction of our waste stream to landfills or incinerators could equal removing about 21% of US coal-fired power plants offline. That's the equivalent. So who is this lady talking to me? Hey, I'm Stacy Savage, aka the Texas Trash Talker. I'm a recycling nerd and a zero waste expert of 20 years. I first started in the the nonprofit field, where here in Texas, I'm based out of the Austin area, where we drove policy and helped develop and pass 2 statewide EPR recycling bills for toxic e-waste. So we worked in 2007 with Dell and Apple and HP to get an EPR take back bill passed. And that did pass in 07, went into effect in 08. We repeated our victory by working with Thomson and Panasonic on a TV take back bill, which passed in 2011 and was enacted in 2012. Also at the local level, worked to help pass 4 Austin recycling ordinances, one for the single-use bag ban, construction and demolition debris recycling, the universal recycling ordinance, which requires all commercial properties and food permitted businesses to divert recyclable and food waste material from landfill. And what was the other one? It'll come back to me. There was one more, but I can't remember it right now. Anyway, I was a nonprofit co-founder of the Austin Zero Waste Alliance way back when, which was a kind of a watchdog group. We were just a whole band of volunteers that were on the lookout for good zero waste policy nationwide that we could take and put into place here in Austin. And then, after that, I was a council appointee. The city of Austin City Council appointed me to the Zero Waste Advisory Commission, where I served in a volunteer arena for 2 years there. I'm currently a board member of the State of Texas Alliance for Recycling, and I also serve on the executive committee for that organization. And I founded Zero Waste Strategies, which is a consulting firm, back in 2013. So in the mix of all of this volunteer work and passing bills, and I founded a company. I don't know what I was thinking, but so these are some of the clients that you may recognize that we've worked with in the past. And we can add a lot more to this list, but these are some of the well-known names that a lot of people can recognize. So what exactly is organic waste? That's anything that comes from plants or animals. So it's fruit and veggie peels, bones and shells, paper towels, yard clippings, even manure. And food waste reduction goes back to Depression era of the early 1900s. The the USDA has been pushing nationwide food waste reduction measures for decades, generations. And these are just some examples of the posters that the department would put up around depression impacted areas about how important it is to save food, to not waste food, to only cook just enough for what your family's going to eat, to save what will keep, and to grow your own at home. Now, for the first time in about 20 years, the EPA has just released, about less than a year ago, back in October, the first update to the wasted food scale. And this shows an arc of the most preferred to the least preferred ways of managing organics. And some examples over here in the rainbow color on the right, inventory control, your first in, first out, dating your foods whenever they come in after purchase, legal food donations, which we'll dive into we'll do a deep dive here in a moment. Working with farmers and ranchers to get your consumable excess food that is no longer consumable by humans, but it's still okay for livestock. And then even looking at biofuels and beautification projects where, mulching and that type of thing becomes a beautification for a lot of cities as well, or county road projects. And then working with composters, of course, where it's a paid fee to have industrial composters come and haul your food waste away and to process it at their industrial facility. And then, of course, at the very end, you've got burn and bury, that's landfill and incineration. So just some statistics on food waste that will kind of make your jaw drop here. On. The amount of food wasted in the US each day, not year, not month, each day could fill the Rose Bowl Stadium. That represents $165 billion worth of wasted food every year. So this has only been exacerbated by COVID. Before the coronavirus pandemic, there were more than 35,000 or million people that struggled with hunger in the US, and 10 million of those are children. Now it's more like 54 million people, including 18 million children, that experience food insecurity. You also have to think about the job loss and all of the restaurants that had to close down, that had a really hard time reopening or reestablishing their business. So now we're going to get to a fun little game where you can test your compost knowledge. And I'm going to do 3 true-false questions. And this is where you can type it in the chat, the true or false, once I do the question, or just TRF, whichever one you want to do. And then Jill is going to take a look at all the answers that are coming in and kind of get a sense of which way we're leaning before I reveal the answer. So here comes your first question. I'm going to give everybody 10 seconds after I ask the question to enter your answer. Okay, ready? Here we go. Paper hand towels should be recycled, not composted. Is that a true or false statement?
False. 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 Wet or dry? False.
All right. Answer is false. And then I give a little snippet at the bottom here about why. So paper hand washing towels, they've been downcycled so many times that it shouldn't really be recycled. It's not of value to a recycling processor. Now, if you take office paper or newspaper, you've got long strands. They're beautiful to these recycling and processors. those are the kinds of paper recyclables that they want. They do not want paper hand towels in their recyclables. Those fibers are just too short to have really much value to that recycling processor. And they're excellent though for compost. They kind of bring that mixed balance of the wet and dry to the food materials. All right, moving on. Next question. Industrial compost facilities can process meat, bone, and dairy products. True or false?
Good. True, 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 true.
All right, answer is true. So always remember, if your city offers curbside compost pickup for residential homes or multifamily, it's really likely that the program allows meat, bone, and dairy because they take that from your curb to an industrial processor. But you always want to check first, of course. I know that there are some industrial composters out there that will refuse meat, bone, and dairy. So we really need to make sure that the rules are followed because the load will be rejected if there's materials in there that they just can't take. So they can take these because it is the windrows get hot enough to break down the proteins in the meat, bone, and dairy. So
Something
you
that,
don't want.
oh, sorry. I was gonna say something that might be confusing there, Stacy, is some communities, across the nation still do, people might think of it as curbside compost pickup because there's like a local nonprofit or community farm that's picking it up that may not want those products in it because of, the way they're composting on their urban farms, which would be a different process than the industrial composting.
Right, exactly. And that's why I have at the bottom, never put meat, bone, dairy in backyard compost tumblers or community garden compost bins because they are not going to want to deal with that. It just doesn't get hot enough to break down those types of materials. Now, coffee grounds, eggshells, and avocado peels, fine. But none of the meat, bone, and dairy, guys. We've got to be really discerning about what we put in these composting bins. And you have to either check with the city or check with the hauler to make sure that you're putting the correct materials in there and keeping the wrong materials out. All right, so next question, final. And if you're Gen X like me, you will hopefully appreciate this because it is a cult classic reference. But if you don't get it, I highly encourage you to watch The Princess Bride. So, compost attracts rodents. And Princess Buttercup says, Wesley, what about the ROUSs, rodents of unusual size? Wesley says, I don't think they exist. And he gets attacked by one. And it's one of the funniest scenes in this cult classic movie. So if you haven't seen The Princess Bride, please do, because you're going to really enjoy it. Shout out to Gen X. But true or false, compost attracts rodents?
False, false, and read the book too. False.
Alrighty. Answer is false, with a little caveat. It's mostly false. So that is if you're correctly balancing the percentage of dry materials that produce carbon and nitrogen, which is kind of like yard waste and your dry leaves and pine cones and that type of thing, with the wet materials that provide liquid, which is your food waste. So this way you don't get a sludge, but a very dark, dense power-packed soil amendment that crumbles like cake. So it looks like chocolate cake whenever it's done processing. So otherwise, you might get some visitors like rodents, raccoons, flies. You definitely want worms in your compost bin, but you want to make sure that you've got a tight lid, or that a lid that uses a clamp down or a screw-on feature. Hashtag outsmarted. Alrighty, so moving on. Good job, everybody. Thank you for participating. Now, how do we reduce spoilage? This is, remember how we talk about that hierarchy. Reduction in food waste is, of course, your highest priority. And part of that comes from reducing spoilage. And that is through your food purchasing cycle as a hospitality worker or a manager or a sustainability director or a green engineer. This is where we're talking about what does the entire food purchasing cycle look like for your business internally. So you always, of course, want to inventory your food stocks before making any orders or purchases. You want to research what is on hand recipes. So what do you have on hand that you can make as like an a la carte for the day? And especially if there's a prioritization around what is about to expire or what is about to spoil, that's really important. And as you can see here, Chef in the kitchen is very happy. I bet Chef has a little bit of autonomy in the kitchen because Chef knows what's about to expire, what's about to spoil, what the dating, the food dating is, what the rotation looks like. So if you've got some autonomy in the kitchen for your chef crew, they're going to be able to optimize the food purchases that you've made as a business to make sure that those get out to paying customers before they go to waste. You also want to have your purchasers consider smaller purchases, but purchasing more frequently. So maybe you do 2 to 3 times a week for a delivery instead of a bulk purchase every 2 weeks. You do want to bulk purchase things that are shelf stable, like your grains, pastas, and dried beans, your frozen foods, like your meats and veggies. And then remember, food rotation is really key. So getting the date, writing the date of delivery on your packaging, and then doing first in, first out rotation. So making sure that box of limes for your margaritas don't end up at the back, that nobody sees and nobody rotated to the front because now they're ripe and they need to be used, but 2 weeks later they're overly ripe and now they're moldy and you got to throw them all out. So just remember the dating and the first in, first out food rotation method is really critical to keeping this food waste reduction at top of mind. And then, of course, you want to reuse your scraps, veggie peels for stocks, soups, and sauces. And then you can legally donate for tax credit. This is excess foods that would normally be sold, but they are approaching like an expiration date, right? And you want to do a donation. So we'll get into the IRS aspect of this just in a moment. Another thing to think about is proper appliance temperatures. I'm sure that anyone here that has worked in the food service industry, I was slinging margaritas and fajitas for 9 years in a Tex-Mex restaurant here in Austin before I became an environmental activist. So going through the food prep process and getting state training on food handling and understanding what it means to have proper appliance temperatures, it still sticks with me to this day. I've got a digital marker on my refrigerator and my freezer to show exactly what are the appropriate temperatures and what the temperatures are set at. And if I have a blowout with my my capacitor or whatever, then I can see that temperature start to rise, which is no bueno for aiding and reducing strains of spoilage, mold, and foodborne bacterial pathogens. Oops. So keep your appliances up to date as well as maintained. Now, one thing that a lot of people get confused about is the use by versus sell by versus best by date. You're going to be shocked by this if you don't already work in the food industry in hospitality, but the dates are labeled based on the food product by the manufacturer, not the government. The dates are just point to kind of a peak freshness time span, or eat this before this date. That's the peak freshness when the quality of the product starts declining, or their estimate of when the quality of the product will start declining. Those dates don't really have anything to do with food spoilage. The only thing that is regulated by dates on food is baby formula, and that is a requirement by the FDA, but nothing else has use by, sell by, best by date requirements from the FDA for expiration dates on food. But the FDA is now supporting an industry-led effort to reduce confusion among consumers like you and me, even maybe your purchasers at your place of business, with a more consistent best if used by date. So This is probably what most of you are here for, is how do we get those IRS tax filing submissions to claim that we have legally donated food and that we should be compensated for it. Well, here we go. And feel free to take screenshots of all the instructions. Jill will be sending out a recording of this webinar here. So back in the 80s, of course, we've all got that, that myth of when you give away food, it might get someone sick, you might get sued legally, you might be legally liable as a business. So thanks to the 1996 Bill Emerson Good Samaritan Food Donation Act, it limits liability protection for people who make a good faith donation. And I'll tell you what that means here in a minute, to nonprofit organizations that feed the hungry. This is your food banks. This is your shelters, and so on. So these are just, back in the day, the on the far left, you've got the early 19th century, and clearly in the middle and on the right here, you've got some 80s ladies working the food bank here. But it just spans a whole reach of time of food, saving excess food, donating it to those who are most needy in our community. But now, businesses are legally protected. So starting here is whenever you might want to start taking some screenshots. If you want to see the entire document where I pulled this information from, it's the Harvard Food Law and Policy Clinic. They worked with the University of Arkansas, I believe, as well. So I've got the source linked. But who is eligible is federally, as of December 2015, all businesses. And that includes C Corps, S Corps, LLCs, partnerships, sole proprietorships. The businesses are eligible for the enhanced tax deduction, but you got to meet certain requirements, right? So moving on here is the next part of it. Where do you donate? So the donor organization must donate food to a 501c3 nonprofit. So like we said earlier, the food banks and the shelters, that type of thing. And you need to be able to do that in a way that is sticking with proper time and temperature standards of your state's health department. So going again down into food safety, all applicable laws must be followed whenever it comes to the food safety. So there's an example here where food may not be adulterated or misbranded, and you have to be able to show compliance with that, with the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act, the FDCA. I can't get it out. So basically, they're saying time and temperature standards through the state's health code and following federal legislation as well. And then how do you submit your claim? Well, there's a couple of steps here. You need to describe what you contributed, including the date that you donated it, the statement that the property will be used in compliance with requirements, and a statement that the recipient organization is recognized as a 501c3 tax exempt under federal income code here, and a statement that the adequate books and records will be maintained and made available to the IRS if they request it. So I would definitely get a screenshot of this, because this shows you exactly how to calculate your deduction. And there's an example here on the left, and then some more deeper details on the right. So it goes through and shows that there's two ways to make a calculation. You can either use your tax basis times 2, or your tax basis times 1 plus expected profit margin of what was what was donated, divided by 2. So there's these two calculations will show that you're going to be able to take the smaller of whichever calculation. Go ahead and do both calculations, but you'll need to choose the smaller of the two. So this in this example, this company would be able to get $60 worth of enhanced tax deduction whenever they file. And this just goes on to your, I think your Form A, whenever you file your taxes. So you can list out, you can itemize, and if you need to attach a different sheet of paper to continue your itemizations, if you've got a lot, go ahead and include that as well, or just print out another Schedule A form and continue your itemization from the previous page. Alrighty, so we're doing all this diversion, but what good is it if we're not tracking it, right? So I want to introduce you, or maybe you already know about it, some new technologies. So one would be tracking technologies through smart bin sensors. There's a lot of companies coming out. I'm sure a lot of you have heard of Big Belly, aerobic digesters, just like this one I have here called the Orca, where it biodigests in about 24 to 48 hours, and it just spits out gray water into the municipal water stream, which helps with water reclamation for the city. This has been approved in many cities across the US. And Orca usually talks to the city water department to make sure that it's okay that they expand into their market. So they won't really start selling in your area if the city says, no, they can't be hooked up to our purple pipes. So just something to think about. And if you're interested, Orca is one of my clients, so I can help you if you're interested in getting one of these on site. They've got 4 different sizes to kind of right size to what your actual specific business needs are in your back of house. And then, of course, there are weight scales like, LeanPath, and I think Sodexo and Cisco uses this type of product. But of course, pen and spreadsheet work just fine too, if you want to keep it simple. Another option to look at is working with corporations that rescue food, like Misfits Market, which has acquired the other company called Imperfect Foods. So Imperfect Foods is now also Misfits Market. And then Hungry Harvest. These are companies that will take rescued food because of the specs aren't right on the packaging, or they're ugly fruit and vegetables and they've been rejected because of aesthetic issues, and they will collect them, and their customers put in orders for these boxes of food to be delivered to their door. It saves on costs, it saves on food waste as well, and really makes quite a optimized operation for them. And I do need to give a little shout out to Misfits Market, since they're one of my clients too. So how do we talk trash? How do we convey all of these efforts to the general public, to those who we are hiring as well? How do we convey this to our investors and our shareholders? Well, there's got to be a whole strategy around green communications, your green storytelling, and telling your journey of how you got from one point to another and what are the results. Using transparency campaigns as well. This is especially effective with shareholders, but also for your employees. If you can show your employees, we started here at the beginning of 2024 with our recycling rate. We did a waste audit at the beginning of the year. We did a waste audit at the end of the year. And this is, our recycling rate has increased by this much percent. That's because of you. And really giving that pat on the back for the employee engagement and their participation. Those transparency campaigns are really important for people to see that their efforts are actually making a difference and that they're getting rewarded for it too. Don't forget to reward your staff for helping you get these programs into place and actually followed and made successful. So of course your social media content is going to be a big deal, and putting these strategies together that can tell the story. Of course, you want community engagement. These are people who buy your products in your local area. These are people who want to see that they are investing their hard-earned dollars into a company that cares. a company that has green operations. So putting that community engagement out there. Maybe it's, your company has 20 volunteers that it wants to help with the local Earth Day festival. So you've got your logo T-shirts on, right? You're doing maybe a community picnic or something along those lines where you drive a zero waste community picnic. So just a couple of things to think about, getting your employees out into the community and getting your name out there where there's actual face-to-face engagement. Of course, employee onboarding is very critical. Having these programs in place doesn't do much unless you've got that employee buy-in, right? So when you get employees onboarded as new hires, then it's important, just like safety policy, that you have a waste diversion policy little clause in your onboarding documents that the new hire signs off on. And that could say something as simple as, I agree to source separate my materials the way the signage states, or something along those lines, to where you can, and then you can show them, this is the signage, this is what goes in the bin, this is what does not go in the bin, cross-contamination is disallowed. And this is our goal for our sustainability around waste management. And then they get an idea of, oh, I can help with this, right? So they feel more empowered. They start to take on ownership of the programs. They start to show newer people under them that they can help out too, and showing them how to recycle properly. So of course, traditional media, press releases, if you've got some kind of big initiative that's coming out, and you want to kind of edge out the competition a little bit there, you can put out a press release and make an announcement as well. So another final thing here is certifications and awards. There's loads of business certifications out there, but there's only a couple that deal with zero waste specifically. And so the one I'm talking about is part of our services as a company, as a consulting firm. We're True Certified under the Green Business Certification, Inc. You'll see my certification here, and you can look up on the true.gbci.org. And this is where True Certified advisors, such as myself, can come into your property, and we can take a look at your operations. We do a site visit. We'll look up and down at your operations. We'll look at your waste hauler contracting. We'll do a waste audit up to our elbows for 5 hours in trash if we need to figure out what's going out into your dumpsters. And then also we'll be able to do an engaging and fun employee training that's gamified, just like you guys experienced with the True False. We go a little bit deeper in our trainings to make it a little more fun, but awards and certificates and that kind of thing also. But getting that True certification from GBCI is your stamp of commitment on zero waste operations. So having someone like me come in and help you guys with the, where to start, what are all the compliance factors, and putting in the submission for the application, and the building out the narrative of telling your story of how you actually got all of your operations to zero waste, and then finding all of the or compiling all the data that needs to go into supporting the narrative that you submit. I'll help you with all of that. And so I work with your entire team or your point of contact in order to get that certification reviewed by the certifiers over at the True organization, and get that stamp of approval from them. And then, ta-da, you do a big press release and a press event, and you do a case study, and easy peasy, right? So if you need help with that, if you're interested in chatting about it a little bit, let me know. I'm more than happy to set a little time aside for you to go through what the steps might look like. Just a couple of other services. If you don't want to go as far as a True certification, but you still want to know where you're at, remember, if you can't measure it, you can't really track it. So you have to start with one of those waste audits. Like I said, we're up to our elbows for 5-6 hours if we need to be. We sort through your trash and your recyclables and your food waste, and we figure out what belongs, what doesn't belong, what's your recycling rate, what is your cross-contamination rate. We develop an analytics report as well. And we do, on-site employee training or virtual if you want. We've got Q&A sessions as well. And then we can help you with green marketing strategies as well. How do we take those efforts and fold them into creative sustainability messaging that will move people, and then also creating a competitive market analysis around what your green initiatives are. And then we also have a Cash for Trash zero waste online training, and this is more for small business owners and managers. If you want to just get a quick start, this is your launch pad right here. So we've got a couple of online training modules. You'll get one-on-one consultation with me specifically. We do weekly support calls. You'll get educational resources. And once you're done, it's an 8-week program, you'll get your graduate certificate. So these are some resources that you can use to learn at your own pace. Zero Waste International Alliance that I mentioned a little earlier, zwia.org, the U.S. Green Building Council, which administers the LEED program, as well as TRUE, and the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, Five Gyres Institute, which really tackles plastics in our oceans. And the Story of Stuff project is really cute if you like cartoon vignettes that are very boiled down. This is really great for kids. If you have kids that are starting to get interested in these types of issues, Story of Stuff has some really great cartoon vignettes. They're only about 20-30 minutes long, but it's a lot of fun. And then, of course, the age-old question is, if we're not for zero waste, how much waste are we for? And with that, I will provide my contact information. Feel free to take a screenshot of this as well, and we can open it for any Q&A.
Awesome. Thank you, Stacy.
There you are. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if you want to stop sharing your screen, you'll be able to see people if we have a small group here today. So I think if people want to just go ahead and turn on their camera or audio, if we start speaking over each other, we can raise hands or discuss in chat. One of the questions that I have, Stacy, is on the need for additional refrigeration, maybe for the edible food donation. Are there some best practices or funding or consistency as far as organizations that need to add additional refrigeration capacity to store that edible donatable food prior to pickup?
Yeah, in order for them to get a food redistribution classification as a nonprofit, they have to be able to demonstrate that they've got the refrigeration capacity. A lot of times, the smaller organizations that will go and pick up from individual businesses will work with like a county food bank, and they'll go and store that product, that those products that they picked up from individual businesses at the county food bank. And a lot of times that additional refrigeration capacity is satisfied there, and so they make the runs back and forth to do and so they have a partnership already developed with the city or the county food bank. But there are other options. It's just something that the food redistribution nonprofit that does take the food and handle it in between, they need to be able to have the refrigeration capacity, which is why those partnerships are so key.
Right. Thank you, Candace. Candace put in the chat that it was a great presentation. So thank you so much for sharing your experience and expertise there. Well, I'd love to hear from some people that are here today. If you're working on programs.
Yeah, tell me what you guys are working on. I'd love to hear it. And if you want to unmute your mic, that it's probably a lot easier than typing it all in a chat box. But if we want to open it up to the Q&A for more of a discussion, you can do that too.
I just wanted to chime in. This was a great presentation. I'm next week about to start some edible food generator and food recovery organization visits for a jurisdiction who's our client. So
Mm.
I haven't worked on that in a bit, but this has been really nice to just like get familiar again and think of the challenges that might present itself. But um yeah, edible food recovery, so important and so big, especially, it sounds like in Austin you guys are doing great with it. And in California, we're working with SB 1383 to kind of get all these big food generators in compliance to donate. So yeah, I don't know. This is just a really helpful webinar. So thank you, Stacy and Jill.
You bet. Well, good luck on re-wetting your feet in the issues and you know, putting some good guidance out there.
Great.
Anybody else have food waste issues or questions? Is anybody here in the hospitality industry specifically?
All right, well, we have a quiet group today. So, as questions come up, I know Stacy is available to answer any questions. You can reach out to me as well. Definitely want your feedback on what things you're running into. So if we do a 5-star part 2, where to dig deeper and drive more. So again, I just want to thank Stacy so much for bringing your expertise here today. I want to thank everybody who attended for the work that you're doing and continuing to make changes out in your communities and to help resolve these food waste issues.
Yeah, and you guys can reach out to me on LinkedIn. You can follow my either my personal or business pages, Zero Waste Strategies, and would love to chat with you. And again, if you want to just book a meeting with me to chat about, maybe brainstorm on some solutions for your business, I'm more than happy to sit with you for half an hour or so to get some ideas on paper.
Awesome. All right, great. Thanks, everyone. Have a wonderful afternoon.